Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back in the video today, and today we're going to be talking about the Orlando Magic potentially trading for Chris Paul, 12-time All-Star. It was reported today by Bleacher Report and other sources that the Orlando Magic are eyeing two veteran point guards to potentially trade for, or one of them, I think, most likely, if he's coming into the Magic, he is probably being brought in through the buyout market. Chris Paul and Kyle Lowry, two of the older veterans in the league, have interested the Orlando Magic. And I'm not going to talk much about Kyle Lowry because I kind of want to focus on Chris Paul in this video. But I don't think Kyle Lowry is most likely going to. I don't think either one of these are going to happen. Maybe Chris Paul I could see happening, but honestly, if one of these is going to happen, it's going to be Kyle Lowry getting bought out by the Hornets and him signing with the Magic. But I think there are other teams who would be, a lot more interested in Kyle Lowry. And I think Lowry, if he, wherever he's going, he wants to win. And I think there are other teams that would be interested in Kyle Lowry that have a better chance to win than the Orlando Magic. So I think it'd have to be a trade for the Magic to go get him. And I don't know who you're willing to give up. I mean, Jonathan Isaac is their best contract. Are you willing to give up Jonathan Isaac and maybe one other contract to get Kyle Lowry? I don't know. I mean, definitely would be worth a think, but Chris Paul on the other end, I actually wouldn't. I don't think it'd be a terrible trade for the Magic to make. Now, it's definitely going to be a trade where you have to, it's definitely going to be a trade where you have to consider, what you're giving up. But I've always thought that Orlando really could use a veteran point guard, on their team. I've always thought that they'd be a better team with a veteran point guard, the best point guard around their team, around them to potentially. I think that I've said that even in the offseason, and in other videos I've made about the Magic, that they needed to bring in a serious point guard. No disrespect to Markelle Fultz. I think he's a great player. But just, I think the Magic can do better with their starting point guard. And I talked about throughout the offseason. And it's funny, as a Rockets fan, one of the players ended up in Houston. But I talked about them potentially bringing in Fred VanVleet. I thought he would have been a great fit for Orlando. And I think he would have been a lot better than bringing in Chris Paul, and that didn't happen. He went to my Houston Rockets. I talked about them bringing in James Harden. I don't know how that would have gone, but I think James Harden would have not been bad with the Magic. I talked about both of those potential landing spots throughout the offseason, and even when James Harden was about to get traded to the Los Angeles Clippers, I also talked about the Magic potentially trading for Harden. So I just always have thought that the Magic need to add in a point guard, and Chris Paul would be a great addition. He's a 12-time All-Star. He's a 5-time assist champ, 6-time steal champ. This season has been weird. I mean, he's been injured for almost a month now. He's only played 32 games this season with 11 starts with 27 minutes per game. This is the first time in his career where he has not started. I mean, he started in 11 games for the Warriors this season, but this is the first time, this was the first time he's ever came off the bench with the Warriors. He's always been a starter in his career. It's been a different role for him, but he still hasn't been terrible when he's been out there. He's averaging 9 points per game. He's averaging 7.2 assists per game. He's averaging 4 rebounds per game, over 1 steal per game at 1.1. His three-point percentage has gone down, but still isn't bad at 36.1%. His field goal percentage is 42.4%. So if I am the Magic, I'm going ahead and I would pull the strings to get a Chris Paul trade done. But what are you giving up? Because I have a good idea what I think the Warriors would potentially want in a Chris Paul trade from the Orlando Magic. And it's something that I don't think the Magic would be willing to give up for Chris Paul, or really don't. What I just heard today is they don't want to trade him at all. And I'm thinking about a guy who has been good for them, Wendell Carter Jr., their center. Look, the Warriors need size. They need to bring in rebounding. I've watched the Warriors throughout the season. I've watched him get attacked throughout the boards, and Wendell Carter Jr. has done a great job rebounding this season with the Orlando Magic. And I think if the Magic have serious interest in Chris Paul, the Warriors are definitely gonna want Wendell Carter Jr. And if the Magic, I just don't see them willing to give up Wendell Carter Jr. And would the Warriors still would the Warriors still trade Chris Paul if they're not getting Wendell Carter Jr.? I mean, like the best assets they could get back are, I'm not saying all three guys for Chris Paul, but I think three of the guys that the Magic could be willing to move for Chris Paul. You're looking at guys like Gary Harris, Markelle Fultz, Jonathan Isaac. I think two of those guys would probably be what Orlando would want to move to Golden State. Maybe Gary Harris and Jonathan Isaac to Golden State for Chris Paul. Maybe Gary Harris and Markelle Fultz to Golden State for Chris Paul. But when Chris Paul is healthy, I don't know. The Warriors would just want Chris Paul to come back and be healthy, and then have him on the court once he's back. I don't know. I don't think the Warriors would trade Chris Paul to just get back Gary Harris or Jonathan Isaac or Markelle Fultz for that matter. The Warriors, if they're going to trade one of their top players, we're looking at guys like Andrew Wiggins, Chris Paul, other guys that have been mentioned in trade talks that are on the Warriors roster. They want their roster to be improved. And as much as I like some of those players like Markelle Fultz, Gary Harris, I don't know, I'm going to go as far to say I like Jonathan Isaac as a player. He's a really good defensive player, but his injuries just kind of scare me. I really like Gary Harris. I really like Markelle Fultz. I think Isaac is a really good defender, but his injuries just make me not interested in him if I were to trade, if you were to trade for him. I'm just thinking in my perspective, but I don't think any of those guys, as much as I like those players, I don't think that improves the Golden State Warriors roster with getting rid of Chris Paul. I don't think either three of those guys improve their roster getting rid of Chris Paul. On the other end, I think getting Wendell Carter Jr. potentially improves their roster. I really do. I think Chris Paul, it'd be a big loss because of how good he's been when he's been on the floor. But they need size. They need rebounding. They need help at that center position. I mean, I like Draymond, but, I don't like some of the decisions he's made. But Draymond's a good player. But right now he's been starting at that 5. I mean, Kevin Looney's been coming off the bench. They don't really have a center. And I don't think the Magic are giving up Wendell Carter Jr. But if I'm the Warriors and the Magic want Chris Paul, Wendell Carter Jr. has to be the return for Golden State. And I just don't see that happening. So I think a Chris Paul trade to Orlando is very unlikely, and I think the only way it happens if Orlando is very serious on wanting Chris Paul and they actually trade Wendell Carter Jr. To the Warriors. But I don't see a Chris Paul or Kyle Lowry trade to the Orlando Magic happening. At this point, I just think it's rumors. But let me know your thoughts on the potential trade and the trades. If we're talking about both Lowry and Paul in the comment section. And peace out.